Flights between Georgian capital city of Tbilisi and Latvian capital of Riga will resume on August 5th, the Ministry of Economy of Georgia reports. According to the ministry, flights will be carried out only once a week due to the epidemiological situation, while from August 20th flight frequency will be increased to 2 flights in a week.
The NBG is considering the issue of digital bank licensing to facilitate the development of innovative business models, diversify financial products, make better use of big data, and develop a customized, convenient, fast, and affordable digital financial ecosystem based on the technological infrastructure around the customer. Digital bank licensing will also help to efficiently use cloud services, encourage the entry of new technological players, and increase competition in the financial sector.
EDB announced an investment of up to $40 million in green bonds to be issued by Georgia Global Utilities, with proceeds to upgrade water supply and sanitation in Tbilisi and nearby municipalities, and to refinance debt of renewable energy and water operation, reports the Asian Development Bank.
More news, Georgi, on GGU from last week. Fitch Ratings has assigned Georgia Global Utilities a final long-term issuer default rating of B+. The outlook on the IDR is stable. Fitch also assigned GGU senior unsecured 5-year USD 250 million notes maturing in July 2025 a final rating of B+. This is the first time that Fitch assigns Georgia Global Utilities final first-time IDR B- bond B+.
Correct. And the final IDR and final senior unsecured rating are in line with the expected ratings assigned on 1st of July 2020 and 14th July 2020 respectively. The proceeds are to be largely used for refinancing existing debt and funding eligible green projects.
The idea of GGU reflects the consolidated credit profile of its regulated water utility business, Georgian Water and Power LLC, GWP, and its fairly higher risk renewable electricity business, which is nevertheless supported by long-term power purchase agreements, PPAs. Overall size, asset quality, forex risk, operating and regulatory environment remain key rating constraints.
So let's examine key rating drivers in more detail. And Fitch expects Georgian Water Power Company to be the most significant operating company for GGU at 72% of average revenue and 60% of average EBITDA per year for 2020-2024. GWP is a regulated water utility with a natural monopoly in Tbilisi, owns the water infrastructure. The remaining business is electricity sales. It operates hydropower plants with an installed capacity of around 145 megawatts. It's linked to the water utility with about 50% of electricity generated for own consumption, with excess electricity sold predominantly through bilateral agreements with direct customers.
Fitch estimates GGU's regulated water revenue at about 60%, adjusting for connection income in the water segment on average per year for 2020-2024. The remaining revenue is from power generation and sale, which is exposed to volume and price risks in the merchant power segment. This is offset by PPA-based power sales, estimated at about 40% of the power segment per year until 2023, and diversification supported by 96 megawatt of installed renewable capacity. While GGU is exposed to merchant activity, about 80% of revenue generated through bilateral agreements is in August to April of each year, when the electricity market is in deficit.
And Fitch estimates that 2020 results still will be affected by the coronavirus outbreak via a sharp contraction of Georgia's economy by an estimated 4.8% in 2020. Fitch expects GGU to breach our FFO net leverage, excluding connection fees, negative sensitivity of 4.5 before recovering to within the threshold by 2021.
Yes, Fitch's key assumptions within the rating case for the issuer are as follows: water tariff to increase about 60% for households in 2021 and to remain flat in 2022, 2023. Water losses dropping to below 35% of total water output in 2023 from around 40% in 2019. Also, Lari USD average exchange rate of 3.1 in 2020 and 3 for 2021. Average electricity volumes sold of about 480,000 megawatt hours per year for 2020-2023. Average annual dividends of about 21 million lari per year in the same period. A capex of average about 80 million lari per year in the same period again. PPA price to average about 18.3 kilowatt hour up to 2023 again. Yeah. Yes. Now our next focus, and it's on the IMF. In response to a request from the Deputy Minister of Finance, a Fiscal Affairs Department Capacity Development Mission took place in Tbilisi from November 6 to 25, 2019. The mission provided guidance on compiling, analyzing and using the public sector balance sheet, meeting with almost every responsible public sector entity and also local and international experts. The mission also held workshops on the public sector balance sheet for the Ministry of Finance and National Bank of Georgia and state-owned enterprises financial analysis for the Fiscal Risk Division at the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah, the sectorization exercise identifies whether SOEs should be inside or outside the general government sector, crystallizes some of the problems within the state-owned enterprises sector. This exercise required as a structural benchmark under the IMF's extended fund facility. Assesses whether 241 SOEs should be sectorized as government units based on whether they can be considered commercial entities on economic rather than legal grounds. Overall, 196 of the SOEs, including ESCO, United Water Supply, Melioration of Georgia, and the Partnership Fund, are to be included within the general government sector. These results highlight the dependence of many SOEs on government funding, as well as the role of government in SOEs' management decisions.
Yes, a deeper analysis of the SOE sector identifies that underlying operating earnings among most of the big 6 SOEs are positive, but large recent and pending asset write-downs retard the sector. This is IMF's finding. Nevertheless, only one of the SOEs is generating sufficient operated profits to cover its capital costs, and others are making significant losses. Overall, the sector, to IMF, has drawn around 6% of GDP from the government budget over the past 5 years without contributing anything in the way of dividends, IMF says.
Okay, so to summarize, 18 state-owned enterprises did not act as an autonomous institutional units. 68 SOS did not provide goods and services at economically significant prices. 16 state-owned enterprises depended on the regular financial assistance from government. 23 of them, owned by municipalities, were engaged in loss-making activities requiring government support, but for which data were not available to conduct the market-non-market test. And data were not available for the remaining 31 small SOEs, of which the majority, 48 of them, were inactive at all.
Yes, and as for the 6 large SOEs, which you already mentioned, Engurhesi, Georgian Oil and Gas Company, Georgian Railway, Georgian State Electrosystem, Marabda Karzakhi Rail and United Water Supply Company, the IMF notes that these state-owned enterprises experienced a significant deterioration in their financial performance on average over the last 2 years. Much of the recent financial deterioration, as the IMF reports, of course, resulted from asset write-downs reflecting reflecting the permanent downgrade in expected future revenue generation.
And it should be noted, Elena, that here is that the major factor accounting for the poor aggregate performance in 2018 was the 2% of GDP asset write-down by Georgia Railway. The IMF also finds that the aggregate net worth of the 6 large state-owned enterprises has declined from around 2.8 billion Georgian lari to under 1 billion over the last 6 years.
Yes, and finally, Georgi, even though the companies generally project their financial performance to improve over the next few years, with aggregate return on investment projected to increase to 6.9% by 2022. However, this outlook for the SOEs is optimistic, such as the assessment of the IMF. The companies as a group are projecting their average revenues to grow at an annual average rate of 12%, 50% higher than the projected rate of growth of nominal GDP. In some cases, this is warranted, IMF says. For example, GOGC will commission the Gardaban 2 thermal power plant that will increase revenue significantly. However, overall, the SOE's aggregate projected growth revenue of 12% stands in stark contrast with the 1% growth achieved over the last 2 years and is worthy of further examination, such as the final stamp of the IMF on SOEs.
And then this week, we heard news from another IFI, a good friend of ours as well, and namely that the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, will provide a loan of 5 million euros for the population of Bakuriani, a city in the Borjomi municipality of Georgia. The sum should be spent on improvement of public transport and services. The financing will help to acquire special vehicles for street cleaning, snow removal, and waste collection, as well as to purchase multi-purpose trucks and 10 modern buses for passenger transport.
Yes, Georgi, we also heard about EBRD's efforts to support Georgia's energy efficiency and energy independence, with EBRD allocating 90 million euros to develop 150-kilometer new transmission network in Georgia. Georgian Finance Minister Ivana Majavariani and EBRD Regional Director of the Caucasus, Katarina Björlin-Hansen, signed this agreement, and the project will include the construction of the 500-kilowatt Lajanuric Kaltubo and 220 kilowatts Kaltuba Namakhvani and Namakhvani Tvishi Lajanuri energy transmission lines. It will also build the Nenskra power substation and Nenskra Mestia energy transmission line in Svaneti. The project will be implemented by the Georgian state electoral system and is due to be completed in summer 2026.
And it's worth to mention that you left studio once again, but right now to meet and to talk with Katarina Björlin-Hansen about the broader approach that EBRD has so far taken in regards supporting Georgia during COVID-19 and beyond. So, what is the main approach of the bank?
Thank you for this introduction and mentioning that I like to leave the studio. EBRD is supporting the green economy in Georgia and globally. This is its core strategy, as you very well know. Green economy first became a buzz phrase in 2012 at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro. In the run-up to the conference, not only EBRD, the World Bank, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the UN Environment Programme all produced reports promoting the green economy. Today, it is a core plank of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. However, during the pandemic, there is a big question whether there's time to think about green solutions when most businesses, and especially SMEs, have to first probably survive this crisis.
A very logical question. It seems. Let's watch an interview with Katarina Björlin-Hansen then and see what EBRD had to say on this issue, deriving from experience it has had in Georgia supporting SMEs to use its approach to the green economy.
So this is Checkpoints, and Katarina Björlin-Hansen of EBRD in Georgia is with us and taking our questions today. Katarina, thank you for coming out in this park to take our questions. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about this green approach of EBRD.
We think that every project can have a greening aspect. So we can start with energy projects where we work with renewables, hydropower, solar and wind. These are of course clean sources of energy, and we are very keen to support this development when we support Georgia's energy independency. In infrastructure, there is also great prospects to making life greener. You can upgrade the bus system, for example, to buy more efficient buses with less CO2 emissions. We have recently invested in the metro, where there will also be energy savings because of the upgrades, the renovations. And we have a concept called green cities, which is a holistic approach to ensure that cities become more green and more livable for the citizens. And Tbilisi was actually one of the very first cities among 30-something cities worldwide that joined up for this program, and it's one of the pioneers, and Batumi is also a part of it.
Yeah, well, has the COVID-19 changed anything in this green approach? Because we see that due to all of this disruption that COVID-19 brought to the world, there is some other challenges as well to tackle.
Yes,
in the countries.
There are other challenges. There are indeed other challenges. And it's a very good question, but actually it has led to fast-tracking projects, to front-load projects. So projects that were in say mid-stage preparation were suddenly fast-tracked to be ready to be implemented. And the reason for doing so is that all infrastructure that will per definition green the economy also create lots of jobs. So it was done maybe for a different reason, but it really had a great green impact on the country. So for example, the metro project is such a project which was fast-tracked to provide jobs and also services for the population.
Yeah.
So it has lots of good aspects.
Yeah, so can you name some of the projects that you think are bringing results? And what is the ultimate goal of this green economy approach?
There are several projects across several sectors. In the energy sector, I would like to mention Dariali, which I really like, which was the first Georgian investor that we worked with with the hydropower. And also Paravani, which was the first foreign investor that we worked with in the sector. The Gori wind park is a very good example of green energy, where we worked with the government to set up the project, and once it was operational, we helped the government to privatize. So now it's a private operator, yes, which is an excellent achievement. I would also like to highlight credit lines that we have with the commercial banks, where we finance, where we give credit lines to the banks for investments in energy efficiency measures of the bank's clients. And this can be anything like upgrades of machinery, which per definition is more energy efficient than the one that was bought 20 years ago. But it can also be for private consumer, for replacing windows or new insulation in the house. It can be a number of measures. And all these come together actually create quite a lot of impact.
What are some of the challenges you see on this way?
Some of the challenges is that many entrepreneurs, they're very, very good at what they're doing, but they are, for obvious reasons, not exactly experts in energy efficiency. So very often we need to bring in consultants to actually help them to assess what can be done. Mm-hmm. This is quite an easy process to go through. Our consultants come in, they look at the production process if they produce, and give recommendations on how to upgrade and how to minimize energy consumption. So there is help to be found. We just need to reach out to the SMEs, and we also, of course, encourage SMEs to contact us for any support they would like to have.
Do you have some new projects in the pipeline, and what are some of the main areas you would like to focus your support to SMEs?
We would like to focus on supporting SMEs first to survive this very difficult period. It's very, very important that they stay in business. By doing that, we also want to help them to become more efficient in their production method. It can be also material efficiency, it can be energy efficiency, it can be a lot of different efficiency measures. And we also want to help the companies to improve their corporate governance standards, because if they do, they will have easier access to financial markets when the time is right. So it's also an added impact on the development of Georgia's financial system.
Yeah, since you mentioned that your first goal is for Georgian SMEs to survive this COVID-19 pandemic, you are very generously supporting and helping SMEs in Georgia through commercial banks. How is this process going, and do you see some of the results, mainly at the project that you have started before pandemic, and then you decided, and some green projects are among these projects, you decided you didn't want to change anything, change profile of this support and go on with this project?
No, basically our approach has been that if we were working with a client before the crisis, we would like to continue to implement the original plans. There have of course been minor tweaks to adapt to the present situation, but in essence we would like to do what we set out to do in the first place. We have also provided lots of support to SMEs in this COVID period, for example in the hospitality sector, because we have many clients could not repay at this point in time, so we've implemented the restructurings, we have done moratorium for repayments and so forth, just to make sure that they get through the crisis still on their feet. I have to say the resilience and the proactiveness of the Georgian business community during the crisis is very impressive. I'm really pleased to see how early companies did very accurate assessments of their needs. They reached out and they discussed with us or either the commercial banks that we are working together with, and we all agreed on what needed to be done, and so we could implement it swiftly. But it's very impressive how professional the companies were in assessing the situation, a situation that none of us have ever experienced before.
Exactly, and in this unpredictability that is like tracking them all the time during this COVID-19. And my last question, do you think Georgia's economy has the potential to have like V-shape, so to say, so that the recovery doesn't take too long? What is EBRD's scenario?
I believe so, yes, because the reliance on tourism has of course hit Georgia very hard right now, but as soon as the health situation improves, people will want to travel and the tourists will come back. And I also see, and I'm very proud to see that many entrepreneurs in the hospitality sector, that they use this opportunity to renovate hotels or implement any other measures that they needed to do anyway, but maybe they didn't get around to it before. So they're using this window of opportunity of no tourists to get things done. It's very good. So Georgia's tourism industry will come back stronger than it was before. And I'm very sure that Georgia will come out of this crisis as stronger than it came into the crisis.
Okay, I will say thank you to you, and let us end on this optimistic note.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Speaking of the economy, let us now turn to tracking the COVID-19 economic recovery together with our trusted partner, as you like to say, TBC Research. One key development definitely worth mentioning is that Google Mobility Index mostly displays a recovery, except for working places and transit stations.
Yeah, and then also transaction registrations in Tbilisi are approaching a positive growth territory, currently standing at -6%, and year-to-year change in mortgages stood at 7% in the week ending on 29th of July. Of mortgages issued since 6th of July, 30% are beneficiaries of the state subsidy program.
Yes, as for the reservations for July indicated 4% occupancy in Tbilisi, 15% in Batumi, 37% in Kakheti, and 19% in other regions, including Kutaisi, Borjomi, Kazbegi. Occupancies are lower for SME hotels, although Kakheti still leads the grid with
it's also notable that remittances inflow in TBC research remains the positive growth territory, standing at it's plus 18% year to year during 26th of July.
Yes, Georgi, an improvement is observed in non-cash spending in restaurants, with the growth standing at minus 23% in the fourth week of July. It's also interesting that growth in resident non-cash spending on non-grocery and pharmacy items increased to 37% year on year. So there are some winners.
Definitely, Elena. And the non-cash transactions in a parallel increased slightly from last week and stood at plus 37% year to year on the fourth week of July. Non-cash spending on construction materials maintains a solid growth rate at 39%, currently at plus 25% year to year, and spending on car repair services maintains strong growth, but has shown slight decreases for the past 4 weeks.
Yes, on the positive side, growth of non-cash spending on personal care on double-digit growth at 19% year on year, and growth of spending on other consumer goods back on the positive territory at 3% year on year. The week was slightly weaker for non-cash spending on furniture and appliances, standing at 31% year on year in the fourth week of July compared to 35% in the last week.
And growth in non-cash spending on electronics down compared to last week, currently at 24%. Non-cash spending on fuel at minus 8% in the fourth week of July.
Yes, very, very practical nuances that TBC research shows. So let's wrap it up here, Georgi, but keep tracking the opportunities for the recovery. What opportunities are there for freelancers in Georgia, and what opportunities do freelancers create for Georgia? Probably we would not even ask these questions quite for a while, if not COVID-19 and the new reality that it brought to a world looking for options it could not even think of in ordinary time.
So very true, Elena. So very true, and it's good that we have people, that we have contacts, we can ask these questions and engage in interesting dialogues and discussions. Gela Barshov, tax expert, is one of such people who has been writing for Forbes Georgia as well. He sat down with the checkpoints to discuss the aspects that COVID-19 has made more evident for the world, and currently Georgia has to engage in this competition as well to seize the opportunities it may provide. More from Gela Barshov. My pleasure to host the managing partner of TP Solution in our Forbes studio. Well, at the same time, I want all our viewers and followers to be aware that you are a contributing writer of Forbes Georgia, and it's my pleasure to host you for the checkpoints.
Hello, Georgi. Thank you for the invitation, and it is my pleasure to be here as well.
Thank you, Gela. And you know, we are following all your initiatives and all your op-eds, other articles, surveys, what TP Solution, you personally are covering. And due to your personal involvement, knowledge, and background, we are very much interested in your opinion on the new initiative coming from the Georgian government, especially from the Ministry of Economy, regarding allowing international freelancers to enter our country and remotely work from here.
Currently, many freelancers living in Georgia, and they entered the country with visa-free regime. They stay here as tourists and working remotely, but they do not have much problem about visa permission. However, that project will be still beneficial for our country, because it is main reason why it will be beneficial is that it is a good marketing material.
For Georgia? For Georgia. But what about freelancers themselves, Gela? Why Georgia is attractive for them?
Yes, first of all, I think in this situation it's COVID-safe country, relatively COVID-safe country, and I think freelancers now are looking for a place which is safer. And in addition, we can offer much more than safety, which is low costs. They are really looking for low-cost countries to cut their expenses, good social life, nice environment. We in addition to it, we offer them good food, great wine, and weather also is important. So I think we have enough to satisfy all their main needs.
I'm going back to the very first question. I'm sorry for interruption, but I also need to know what benefits our country should expect from this decision, and do you consider these freelancers as potential investors for Georgia?
We will make our country more popular for free, because it sounds very good. For example, magazine already published in some other international newspapers, and I'm pretty confident that others also will do. So besides that, this is long-term tourism benefits. They earn money abroad, they spend money in Georgia, so for a long time, so that's benefit for us. But regarding investment, I think we should categorize freelancers, give them subcategories. Typical freelancers earn medium salary, let's say Western medium salary, and
which is quite high for Georgia.
Yes, and they try to go to cheaper countries to make more savings. So those people have some saving, but it's not enough for typically classic investments. They use it for traveling, or maybe maximum, if they feel very comfortable, they can buy one apartment. But under this term freelancer, we can also consider other group of people who earn much more money. They are also self-employed. They work remotely. For them, it does not matter from where they work. And they have hundreds of thousands of USD turnovers annually. So those people have a lot of free financial resources, and of course they don't want to save at home, they want to use it, invest it to make more money. So if they come here, besides to long-term tourism, they will try to look for opportunities to invest. And of course Georgia will be number one alternative for them, because it will be more convenient to invest where they live. So
but you're also considering that these freelancers, up to your description, they will definitely have some followers, which is already good impact and engagement for our existing investment climate.
Followers,
I mean those who will be aware that those are working from Georgia. Right now it's quite difficult to be aware from where Georgi or Gela were working from, because who knows, the tasks are done, contracts are fulfilled. I'm talking about the attractiveness of Georgia, which might be distributed through others, for those whom I'm considering as followers of these potential.
This is a very good point, because they make they make Georgia more popular. They try to advertise Georgia to their business partners, for example, offer our opportunities, because it's in their interest as well. Also, what I should mention is that, in my opinion, I believe that they will bring some knowledge as well. Besides to some financial benefits we are expecting, they are we are involved in knowledge-intensive business. They are professionally field. So there is a chance that they will share this knowledge to our citizens.
Gela, based on your observation, what factors might be most interesting for potential investors in Georgia? Let's go beyond and above freelancing.
Generally, we can offer them very good and beneficial tax regimes for many of them, not all, but for itself, tax rates are not very high, but besides tax rates, we have some good regimes.
And you still consider Georgian taxation system as the most attractive and with huge advantages within the region and worldwide?
I think it's one of our advantages, and I can explain why.
Please go ahead.
We have 15% corporate income tax rate, which is not high, but which is medium.
But it's lower than the lowest.
It's not lowest. However, our corporate tax regime is different from majority of other jurisdictions,
I agree.
Which is so-called Estonian model. You don't pay a corporate income tax annual basis. You pay only after you distribute dividends. But if a company wants to grow up and they want to reinvest their profit, they pay nothing, because reinvested profit is not taxable by corporate income tax. For some group of companies, it is like offshore. In addition to it, we have 1% taxation for natural persons, under $500,000 Georgian lari, which is perfect for freelancers or other entrepreneurs. Not all category falls under this clause, but many of them will enjoy this benefit. We have zero taxation. We have a so-called territorial taxation for natural persons. It means that they are not taxed on foreign source income. For example, if a Georgian resident foreigner trades for stocks abroad and they receive dividend, interest or capital gain from abroad, they are not taxed in Georgia. So we have tax treaty network with 56 countries, which is quite huge for our such developing countries like Georgia. So it is additional protection for them. So besides that, free industrial zones, which offer zero taxation exemption for many activities, but there are some problems here for services. It sometimes doesn't apply, but for many type of business, it could be applicable. We have so-called virtual zone persons, which are for IT companies who are providing IT service abroad. They are exempted from corporate income tax. They don't pay VAT, etc. So it's very beneficial system for them. We have some additional international trade company for re-exporting companies, etc. So we have regimes which could be very beneficial for some group of companies, not all. But besides that, we have such a good tax system, corporate income tax system, which I'm sure will be very attractive for many companies. Yes.
Just before moving to my final question, just after you, we're going to interview David Ebralizze, who is the CEO of Poti Free Economic Zone, and he will definitely be speaking about challenges you mentioned with Free Economic Zone. But okay, I got regarding your attitude as an investment expert, but as a professional tax expert, do you consider the crucial role of the existing tax system anywhere, but we're talking about Georgia, that it's like a breaking point, it's a real checkpoint for the investor, together with legal system, together with criminality and other criteria to make the final decision?
It depends on type of investors. For example, I can tell you one example. We are quite successful in textile industry now. Some companies coming, but what is my observation? They come for low wages. For example, low wages in this industry is 3-4 times less, as I know, than in Turkey in the same industry. So, but mostly Turkish companies come. Not British companies or American companies. We need to show the world that, okay, we are stable, we protect your rights. So if and the most important barrier we have is that people don't know enough about us. That's also a big problem.
Still awareness, Gela?
Yes, I think that, because I can tell you one example. I was studying in Vienna, and I had more than 50 colleagues who are professional tax lawyers, and more than probably 30-40 professors who are also practitioner lawyers in taxation. So only one FM knew about our new corporate income tax system. Everyone knew about Estonia, but no one knew about Georgia.
You're talking about awareness of our advantages within the tax system.
Right. Yes,
not as a country.
In the tax system, low regulation, like low bureaucracy, easier regulations. What we have advantage compared to developed countries. I don't talk now specifically about stability or
competitive advantages of our institution.
Yes, I think it really lacks awareness.
Thank you so much for being with us. It was very interesting. And good luck to TP Solutions, and thank you for being and contributing to Forbes Georgia.
Thank you too. Thank you very much.
And now more on free industrial zones. As mentioned in the interview with Gela Barshov, the World Free Zone Organization held an online ceremony to appoint official representatives in various countries. From now on, Poti Free Industrial Zone will be the official representative of World Free Zone Organization in Georgia. For this purpose, an agreement was signed between World Organization and Poti Free Industrial Zone, at online ceremony.
The World Free Zone Organization is the largest and most influential international association of 1,700 entities around the world, representing the interests of free zones around the world. According to Dr. Samir Hamroun, Executive Director of World FZO, by appointing representatives in different countries, the organization expands its service space, provides problem solving in the regional context, and shares experiences to address the challenges facing free economic zones. Georgi, you interviewed David Ebrardze, General Director of POTI Free Industrial Zone.
Yes, Elena, and according to the General Director of POTI Free Industrial Zone, the successful fight against the pandemic showed that all the conditions are created for the support and protection of investors in Georgia. From now on, POTI Free Industrial Zone, as the official representative of the World Organization in Georgia, will be responsible for the exchange of information, knowledge, and experience with the World Free Zone Organization and the enhancement of integration between the free zones of the world and Georgia.
For more, let us watch the interview with David Ebrardze, CEO of POTI Free Industrial Zone.
David, thanks for being with us. Pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed.
Tell us a bit more about World Organization. Be honest, I've never heard. And tell us a bit more why it's so important for Georgia to be on the map of this organization.
By way of beginning, thank you very much for having me here.
Pleasure is ours.
And to talk about free zones related issues in Georgia. And going forward, well, in terms of World Free Zones organizations, generally speaking, we have more than 3,000 free zones in the world and different types of them, right? Starting from special economic zones and ending to export processing zones. And they cater to various industries, and they form a complex web of trade hubs and specialized industry platforms, which are connected to each other along this global value chain. And that being said, back in 2014, this organization was incorporated and launched in Geneva, in Switzerland, although it's headquartered in Dubai, though, with the aim to help these free zones worldwide to better communicate with each other and to access to best industry standards, to very specialized tools and industries, right? And all this is done by way of regular events and by physical presence in 10 countries worldwide through regional offices. But last week, this organization made the decision to further extend its presence in additional 37 countries, Georgia being one of them, by nominating the national contact points, NCPs, in each country. And we're very proud and thrilled that POTI Free Industrial Zone will be this NCP for free zones in Georgia.
While moving to my next question, personally for you, this organization is still more sort of exchange-wise platform, or it's at the same time some sort of coordination and distribution of various activities? Yeah,
good question. Well, basically within our mandate, we shall be responsible for consolidating, compiling, and providing all the free zones information to them. Basically, will be the focal point of exchange of information and raise the awareness of the free zones in Georgia. And sharing the experiences. I've said they're consolidating more than 1,700 free zones around the globe. So just sharing the experience will be a good opportunity to move forward.
Same happening here in Georgia. Why they fixed, why you person, I mean your team, your company was chosen, because you are not the only existing free economic zone in Georgia. How it's happened?
Well, generally speaking, this organization selects its NCPs based on certain criteria, right? This is the professional reputation, this is the industry knowledge, and of course the time availability for the task at hand. But I would say that our cooperation with this organization, it didn't start recently. I mean, we've been their members for quite some time. I forgot to mention this organization has more than 650 members in more than 130, not NCPs like the members. And
How
we've
many
been
countries?
there 135. So we've been their members for a couple of years, and within this period we jointly organized various meetings, like in Dubai, B2B meetings, workshops. Within my business trips to Dubai, I personally visited CEO, Dr. Samir Harmouni. And I think that during these cooperation years, POTI Free Industrial Zone positioned itself as a very reputable, trustable, stable partner, and the decision was made accordingly.
And Georgia was not before the...
Georgia, the first time that Georgia became the 37th national contact points worldwide.
Purposes of the new status. Tell us a bit more. Yes, you've been engaged as a member, but it's absolutely a new approach and new status.
Exactly. Well, status is a very important and huge responsibility just to provide the information I just plan to conduct a very rigorous and robust informational campaign in the universities throughout the country to raise the awareness about the free zones. Also to talk to the private sector, to remind them to reiterate all the benefits and advantages that the free zones actually offer in Georgia. Should the current situation allow us, we also plan to host a very high kind of end business forum in Georgia, and to invite all the top representatives for the World Free Zones Organization member companies. And of course, I want to invite Dr. Samir Harmouni, the CEO, to Georgia to come organize the meeting with the high-end officials here to jointly designate and address those problems or challenges we have in terms of legislation related to free zones here in Georgia.
Can we be more specific in that regard? Because while having this forum here, that's not going to be a part of agenda.
Exactly.
But we both know that we still face some, let me say so, some legal and some informal things happening around free economic zones. And we need to fix them, and we have a chance right now to raise voice of ours both again.
Thank you very much indeed for this question, because as you might be aware, the free zone legislation was kind of created in 2008 in Georgia. Now we are 2020 year. A lot of things have changed, not only in Georgia, worldwide. So obviously, without any doubt, certain amendments have to be made in the legislation in order to better position our company worldwide. For example, because competition is very fierce in the region. If we're going to look at the special economic zones in Turkey, there's a very good and well-equipped in terms of legislative framework. There are many issues. I wouldn't recite all of them because it will take a long time. Just a couple of points to be. Yeah. This well-known 4%, which is levied on each good inventory product, which is exported from Georgia to free zone, and conversely from free zone to Georgia. Why it creates problem? For example, if I want to build the infrastructure, the warehouse from the sandwich panels inside the free zone, why I should at all think about importing the sandwich panel from Turkey, because the import tax in free zone is zero whatsoever, rather than like choose a local supplier, right? Because we have to pay 4%. Or another issue is the tax regimes. We have only two regimes, like the import regime and export regime, which creates a very big problems on the working level. Why? Because, for example, if I produce a certain product inside the free zone, I sell this product to some end user here in Georgia under the warranty agreement. Some problem occurs, and this product needs to be moved back to free zone to be replaced. Procedure is the following, that this needs to be sold back to me. I have to pay 4%, replace, and sell it back to the end user, and still pay 4%, which you would agree that creates a very weird. And the last but not least, bank guarantee issue. As you might know, on the annual basis, we have to provide a revenue service, the bank guarantee, which is defined to €1 per square meter, but the threshold is 100,000 euros. Yeah. But the situation with the commercial banks, they would issue the bank guarantee without requiring any cash covers, like the partially or fully in the last years. But quite recently we see we're requiring like the full cash cover from the banks, which means that this money has to be taken from our budget and freeze for 1 year, and this creates another obstacle. So obviously there's a time to sit and to plan, to make some certain. We don't have any illusion that all the changes will be incorporated, but at least some changes needs to be to make our free zones more attractive.
Okay, beyond and besides,
yeah.
Still, what's your plans in regards of company itself?
Well, Georgi, I think it's very difficult to talk about the next plan, given the situation what we have right now. But amid this pandemic, we have formed the post-COVID strategy, which is tailored to specific sectors and specific regions in the world, right? And we also made the specific sector studies, and we tailored our commercial offers to the investors based on these studies. I think that we could mostly good position POTFIZ as for the SMEs, like small and medium-sized enterprises, with investment up to 30-40 million USD, and we've been successful in that respect. Since I took the office, we managed to attract more than 80 companies, most of them being the trading ones, but we have 3 factories, which is one nuts processing factory, the microchips manufacturing company, and one of my favorite projects is the automotive spare parts manufacturing company, the beneficiary of which is based in Italy, and he has a similar factory in Milan and also in China. So we conducted this 1-year negotiations, successful negotiations with the investors. So before before the pandemic, he made the decision to shift his factory. I mean, the first phase from Suzhou, the province, from China to Georgia and the Port of France. Yeah, the investment looks at 10 million gel in the first phase. More than 100 people will be employed, and the final product, which will be made from the aluminum zinc bars, like windshield wipers for the cars, will be exported to the world markets like the Canada, Mexico, United States, Europe. Of course, there's a room for the big projects. In fact, right now we are in quite active communications and negotiations phase with one of the big investors, and due to confidentiality, I can't disclose the details right now, but hopefully, I really do hope by the end of this year, we'll be able to officially announce the launching of the projects, the magnitude of which will be extremely high.
Definitely the last one, just for this interview, question of mine is, can we consider during these unprecedented times, what we face, all of us, that free economic zones can be considered as an opportunity for particular countries, for particular economic models? I know that it's quite difficult to predict anything in this period of time or decade. I don't know how to call it, whatever. But do you consider it?
I certainly do consider, and the answer to this is those huge interests from the companies that we have and those who are in the pipeline. Of course, Georgia itself is very attractive in terms of tax regimes, but inside Georgia we have these good zones like for industrial zones, which obviously create additional benefit, but they will be more attractive should we consider to make certain amendments in the legislation as mentioned.
David, thank you so much for being with us. I will definitely pass your regards to Elena Kvanchilashvili. Unfortunately, she missed the interview.
Next time we'll be able to join them. Thank you very much indeed, Georg. Thank you.
Time for Ambassadorial in Tamta Jijavadze. From our team to see what are the main accents coming from the ambassador of Japan in Georgia for our viewers and followers.
Yes, let's start with Japan, because last week the government of Japan has given medical equipment worth 2.8 million in order to contribute to Georgia's medium and long-term socio-economic development, including enhancement of the medical system as well as help the country to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, announced the Embassy of Japan in Georgia. Japan first, and checkpoints will follow ambassadors as well.
We do, and we've scheduled already some interviews. The fact that Japanese companies may be interested in transferring their businesses to Georgia after leaving China has been a matter of debate for several months since Japanese government announced that it intends to invest some money in taking its companies out of China. Does Georgia have potential in this regard? How can Georgia attract Japanese investors, tourists, and also increase trade volume with Japan? These are very relevant questions for today.
Definitely. So Ambassador of Japan to Georgia, Uehara Tadaharu, sat down with the checkpoints.
Following the crisis caused by this pandemic situation, Japanese government decided to mobilize 2.2 billion US dollars in order to shift Japanese enterprises out of China. So how do you think? Do we have a kind of potential in these regards?
Yeah, answer is very simple, yes. And Georgian companies and Georgian business has a great opportunities to receive Japanese businesses at this moment. But I really want you to understand, this is a matter of the supply chain. And our risk management theory, our general risk management theory tells you, don't put all of your egg in one basket. This kind of strategy has lengthy discussed in Japan. So it's not suddenly happened. And because we are seeing accumulation of the Japanese business in China is really huge. So supply chain management need to diversify among the Japanese companies. South Asian countries are very familiar. So some of them are thinking to shift from part of the Chinese exporters to the South Asian countries. But, it's true. Japanese companies seriously review what is optimizing supply chain. So they welcome the new opportunities like Georgia. And so I really want Georgian companies to offer the competitive proposal to the Japanese companies.
According to official data, last year FDI from Japan to Georgia was approximately 40 million US dollars, but this is not a huge number, we know. But what steps should we make in order to increase foreign direct investments from Japan?
Yeah. So to me, I come from private businesses, but I think I understand. So foreign direct investment (FDI) is kind of the barometer of foreign investors' trust. So it is very important. If the foreign investor will feel comfortable in Georgia or any other market, they want to invest more and more. So, but that the last year's 39 million or something like that, it's a good. I'm not satisfied this number at all. And however, it's my understanding that number is a record high in the history, right? For Japanese investment. And this year, I think TEPCO has already decided to invest. So the number will grow to some extent. And I really hope this very positive trend will continue in the future. And but at the same time, Japanese companies really need to make a great study, very important study for Georgia. What is opportunities and what is risk? Every business are involved in risks. So materialization of the business is a kind of a balance between opportunities and risks. One of the crucial thing is everybody's really right now is very cautious what would happen at the coming election, and every investor is really cautious to see the process of the election, and every diplomatic corps really want to very democratic election to be held, and we believe in Georgian people. So that is a very, very important and a very robust signal to the not only the Japanese investors but also the American investors and the European investors. So demonstrating the stability, socio-economic stability in Georgia is crucial.
So do you know any specific Japanese company who is deciding to come to Georgia?
Yes, more than dozen of businesses in the pipeline, but it is too early for me to say the specific name. And so Japanese companies require that usually that a very long time to study, and in the boardroom, board of directors room, there is a robust discussion. This chance should be grasped or stay away from. I know that so a lot of a robust discussion has ongoing in several boardrooms of the Japanese companies. So I'm very optimistic.
So how do you think, what is the main potential of our country in terms of economic development?
But you have been blessed by too many assets. So of course, we need an asset to attract the foreign businesses or foreign tourists. But important thing is we need to use this. How to use it? Of course, tourist agency and YA agency have done a great job. And but at the same time, if you want to invite the Japanese tourists, you need to research about what they want to do in Georgia. and also that what you want them to do in Georgia. So this is a strategy.
Georgi, yeah, even though we both know that there are problems with access to finance in our country due to underdeveloped capital markets and other instruments to finance mainly startups and without risking taxpayers' money for this. Still, there are a number of opportunities also, especially in terms of access to different online events and even competitions, such as Black Sea and Beyond Regional Competition 2020, which is hosted by Georgia, the first and the biggest virtual competition, which involves 10 countries from around the Black and Caspian Seas. The winners of the regional competitions compete to enter the global finals held in Silicon Valley with a prize of $1 million USD investment.
Startup Connect, Tech Park, TBC Startupper all have teamed up to support Georgia and Georgian startups in this very important and tight competition. $1 million is not something one can win every other day. 4 Georgian startups made it to the finals, and one Georgian startup, Faber, made it into top 3 winners.
Yes, Georgi, let's watch what co-hosts of the event had to say to the checkpoints before the competition took off. Today we will be talking about the largest startup competition around the world, and the total prize is $1 million USD. Colin, hi.
Hi.
So how did Georgia end up in this competition?
Yeah, well, we've been spending a lot of energy making connections around the world and showcasing Georgia, some of the promising companies, demonstrating what Georgia can do, and asking people for help and to connect with us. It's difficult for a small country to connect with these top-tier VCs, and we have multiple billion-dollar VCs involved in this project. So it's really been the output of a lot of work by a lot of people in the community and some collaboration with, particularly with Cheetah and us. So, and
wonderful.
Now TBC.
Niga, what should be the result of this competition in the end?
Hopefully for a Georgian startup, $1 million. So to be very simple.
Do you think that's realistic?
Absolutely, yes. And I really hope so. And this is the motivation for TBC to be part of it. And I think overall what we will achieve after this hosting event basically in Georgia is the increased awareness about doing startups, starting up new businesses, and the fact that Georgia can be really a regional hub for a startup community. And this is why we all kind of teamed up to support this event and this competition, because we all do think that this is super important for our country and to be host of this kind of regional huge event.
Yes. Mariam, more on this point, what it means that Georgia is hosting this kind of large, super large competition for startups.
So this is first of all the response to the successful reforms which have been done in recent years for startup ecosystem development, which is joint efforts of government, private sector, and startup community itself. On the other side, it's a unique opportunity because the performance of startups and innovative solutions which they came up marked Georgia on the global startup map. So Georgia is now positioned not only as a country but as a regional hub where we can mobilize the startups not only from Georgia but also beyond the Black Sea. So this is also a very unique opportunity for our ecosystem.
Yeah, if not COVID, as I understand, Georgia would be, how to say, materialistically host of this country. I mean, all these people would have come to Georgia and stuff like that. What does COVID-19 context change in this context?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of live events that have gone online. And that's been a challenge. It's not as much fun and so on and so forth. But we've been able to have amazing speakers come in. So we really have top-tier talent, people sitting in their living room in Silicon Valley, in San Mateo or wherever, just talking about their lives, talking about what they've learned, building great companies. So it actually has been a window of opportunity for Georgia to get into these folks' lives and attention more and to really tell our story and make them want to come here. So yeah, people can't come here this year, but they're going to want to come here. So our goal is to make them fall in love with Georgia, fall in love with some Georgian companies, and help everything grow.
Yeah, and also I believe that we need these kinds of success stories, like local success stories that, you know, there is a startup in Georgia that got 1 million USD. A few words about the sustainability, because we are talking a lot about capital markets, about investors, angel investors, whatever. So more on this, what are some of the challenges and what are some of the strategies to combat this challenge?
So to ensure the sustainability, there should be several pillars, right? So one of them is regulatory framework development, which is incentivizing the startup ecosystem, so simplifying startup activities in the country. On this regard, the government is intensively working, so initiating the crowdfunding regulation and some other laws, including the procurement and also tax incentives for IT companies. So this is a continuous work which will be ensuring the sustainability of ecosystem development. On the other side, awareness raising, involvement of the startups is crucially important, and good thing that we are hosting it also during the pandemic in the virtual session, where we have like a hopping platform which is ensuring that we have the exhibition component, we have the networking component. This is also kind of feeling like a realistic, materialistic conference. So, and also, of course, access to finance. And in access to finance, we have to ensure more private sector participation, establishment of venture angel investments in the country, which also they are looking at the success of the startups. And so when
it works both ways, right?
Yeah, so these are the key pillars which are ensuring the sustainability. Most important is the mindset. So mindset has been shaken in Georgia, as I see, and this mindset wouldn't be changed. So Georgia had a history of making some shortcuts or making some changes or coming up with innovative solutions, and when it's supported with these core pillars, it ensures the execution and sustainability.
Yeah. When you mention access to finance, and I look at Nika, I also remember that not only access to finance, but also helping them to how to pitch, what are some of the skills, that sort of stuff. Nika, on to you.
I think one of the key components of sustainability of all this is access to capital and access to money for development, to cash, basically. And we are a bank, basically. We can only lend. We don't have the equity instrument, so to say. However, we do have a program which finances startups, and startups in broad range of this understanding. So starting from technology, ending to, for instance, agri or hospitality startups. So basically, in this regard, we have several $100 million lari portfolio already in loans. And we do hope that this kind of trend of financing and supporting startups will increase in Georgia and also in the region, because otherwise I don't see how the companies can survive, because they never operated. For instance, they never had their cash flows, and they are now starting, and basically somebody should do the first step of financing. And we created several instruments, and really we have several $100 million lari portfolio already generated over last 2 or 3 years. So I think this is very important, and not only financing, but also this capability building or capacity building, because you have to teach this community how to pitch, how to think firstly, how to do the business plan, how to assess the key risks, how to understand what are the key difficulties afterwards. For instance, the most common mistake in early stage companies is that they are like 5 founders or 6 founders, and after 1 year of operations, suddenly the founders cannot talk anymore to each other, so they break up and the companies go basically bust. So in this regard, there are many small insights which we as an experienced community can bring to startups, along with financing and other frameworks which Mariam just mentioned. So I think this is also super important for sustainability.
Thank you so much. And probably my last question. These days we're talking a lot about what could be some of the competitive advantages of Georgia, especially in post-crisis economy, and especially after this COVID-19 finally ends with the vaccine, hopefully. So do you think this hub that all 3 of you have mentioned several times could be one of the attraction points, so to say, to this country?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons why some of the people who are engaging with us, like Trey Stevens from Founders Fund, $3 billion early stage fund. I mean, that's a lot when you're talking about startups. Deborah Magid, there are some folks who made visits to Georgia. Various people brought them here, especially Gita, and we tried to give them good hospitality. We tried to have good Georgian wine and good company and so on and so forth. And so this conference we did last fall was legendary. Like people were talking about, I want to go to Georgia. Like Bill Reichert was there, said it was awesome. Amrit Deer from Google said it was awesome. So we have such a buzz, and it's not overselling, right? Like I came to Georgia, I didn't know anything about Georgia. I was supposed to be here for 2 years, and I'm here 4 years later, and I just am telling everybody how amazing it is. Because the environment that's here, there's so many aspects of life here that are so much better. And now with COVID as well, like it's becoming world famous as a place that's safe. Like I hope we can maintain that. But yeah, I think that's a huge advantage. And I think also Georgia has the advantage of a lot of creativity. Some places you have more developers, they just grind through code, they write software, and that's fine. But the VCs who come here, they feel something different in Georgia. And I think it was Trey said, this is the most divergent startup ecosystem I've been to, which means there's such a range of ideas and opportunities. It's not just people stamping out some cookie cutter idea. So the hospitality and the creativity, I think, are just two strong assets for Georgia.
Wonderful. Let's wish then that Georgian startup will get the million. Thank you so much.
All right.
And while the checkpoints is slowly drawing to an end, let us speak a little about what should have been the first largest public-private partnership project, and often called the strategic startup of this country.
And this is definitely Anakleia. Not only a port as referred, more commonly, but the whole ecosystem, including Anakleia city as well.
Well, Georgi, it happened what most of us anticipated long before this week. Anakleia Development Consortium filed an arbitration lawsuit against Georgia.
Yes, and it's as it became known during the official press conference, Bob Baer, one of the main investors, filed a separate arbitration lawsuit against Georgian government.
The plaintiffs take the decision of the Georgian government about termination of the contract as illegal and demand a restitution of their rights. According to their statement, the demand exceeds $1 billion USD and comprises losses of consortium and mayor himself.
Ted Jonas will explain more for the viewers of the checkpoints. He's a board member and dwells well into details. We're open to listen to the government as well. The checkpoints is an open platform for all voices. Let's now hear from and more from Ted Jonas.
EDC decided to go to arbitrage.
Yes.
What pushed you or led you to this decision? Because we knew this was an option, but we also saw that EDC was taking its time.
Yes.
To take this decision.
Yes. Well, deciding to handle a disagreement or a dispute by going to court or by going to arbitration is not an easy decision or one to be taken lightly, because international arbitration takes a long time, it costs a lot of money, and there's always uncertainty in any kind of litigation or arbitration. So we made effort after effort, many efforts, outreach, phone calls, meetings, to try to gain the government support for bringing in new investors, and it wasn't working. And force majeure actually required them to sit down and continue negotiating with us to resolve the force majeure problem. The force majeure problem being their utter lack of cooperation in obtaining the last investor that was needed for the project. They did not negotiate in good faith. There were a couple of meetings that really led nowhere. And so when there was a final deadline of the end of the year, after that deadline, they declared a termination of the agreement. After that, we began to prepare for the arbitration, because once they had terminated the agreement, then we clearly had no choice. So January, February, March, we were preparing seriously for the arbitration. And then the COVID crisis came. And everybody knows that the government was deeply engaged in handling the crisis. I think most of us agree that the government did a competent job of handling the crisis. And we did not want, as good corporate citizens and as individual citizens, I'm a citizen of Georgia and the United States, to distract the government from the job that it had.
But somewhere in between, we remember from the head of ADC that there were some hopes that this cooperation could be resumed.
After a certain point, it was clear that the only hope for making the project work and come together was if the government would signal, as it had promised to do, would communicate to a major investor that it was ready to support them in the project. We brought to them 2 new investors who were great investors for this project. One of them they were openly rude to in a meeting in Maya Tchitishvili's office. This was the Hong Kong company, a Hong Kong investor. I've never seen anything like this in my many years' experience here of bringing foreign investors to the Georgian government. This was a perfectly credible company. As for the American company, a large private equity fund, had made it clear that they needed to receive a clear, unambiguous signal that the government supported this project. So we had to work out business terms with that partner. We were willing to agree to business terms that were very favorable to that partner, but the signal of support never came from the government. The one essential piece for getting that investor into the project never came.
Do you see the reason why that happened? And is this reason, or could the reason that they are saying that ADC couldn't meet the deadlines could be a serious case for the court?
The reason that yes, they say that the reason that they terminated the agreement is because we couldn't meet the deadlines, but they are the ones who undermined our ability to meet the deadlines. Within about a month or 2 after we had gotten mandate letters from IFIs, they brought money laundering charges against Badri Japaridze and Mamuka Khazaradze. Money laundering charges that Transparency International and the public defender, the Human Rights Ombudsman of Georgia, have both done legal analyses of and have said are baseless. Now, the government knows very well, and people at the top of the government know very well, that when you bring money laundering criminal charges against somebody, it makes them toxic for public international funds and international development. And money laundering charges in particular in the financing sector and in the corporate sector are seen as particularly bad. Not long after we made a very important step forward with an American equity investor back in May or June of 2019, all of a sudden they issued a land use permit for Poti Port to build a deep water port at Poti. And that scared everybody in our project because there's not enough of a market for more than one deep water port on Georgia's Black Sea coast. Okay, that's why the government itself picked Anaklia, and in 2014 this government picked Anaklia. And when in June or so of 2019, all of a sudden they issue a land use document for Poti to build a deep water port at Poti, our terminal operator, SSA Marine, was like, whoa, if that's going to happen, then we're going to have a real business problem, okay? Because there's not a market here for more than one port. So that caused them to escalate their demands. That was a very negative signal to the American investor that we had, the private equity fund. So I think they were very clever in picking because they knew what was going on, because we had to inform them all along the way. Here is something from the international banks, here is a new investor that we have. They knew exactly what we were doing because we had to inform them, and it was possible for them to time actions so that they disrupted that process. Based on comments that Mr. Ivanishvili made to Badri and Mamuka, based on statements that the government made, based on statements that AP Mahler Terminals made, which is the owner of Poti Port, I think it's pretty clear that there was a campaign by AP Mahler Terminals and by certain Georgian business people to obstruct the construction of Anaklia.
Who do you mean under business people?
I do not want to be explicit at this point. But this kind of thing will come out in the arbitration and in evidence in the arbitration. And there is some let's say, strong suspicion of Mr. Ivanishvili himself having personal interests in the development of the area around Poti Port, the development of the district. And the thing is that Mr. Ivanishvili himself mentioned Poti Port a number of times. Why aren't you doing Poti Port? Now, it's quite interesting that his own government for 3 years had been developing Anaklia, and then all of a sudden he wakes up and says, why aren't you doing Poti Port? Well, why did he suddenly have that change of mind? I also think that there has been a strong Russian interest in opposing Anaklia. I will tell you that when I first came on the board a year ago, and this was one of the reasons that we were considering and discussing, I said, I don't buy that reason. I don't believe it. Because the government's been developed. Yeah. And I thought, it's probably more likely that it's some personal issue between Bidzina and Mamuka or something like that. Over time, based on things that I heard some government people say informally, myself, based on statements that representatives of the Russian government made, based on some statements that will be in evidence in the arbitration case that were heard from Georgian government people. Apparently it was made, the Russians made it clear themselves in public statements that they didn't want a big American project right there on the border with Abkhazia.
We also heard Pompeo's message.
So there's no question that Anaklia is very much a part of the economic and political integration of Georgia into the West. That is exactly why the Russians don't like it, and they didn't like the pipelines either. And they've been explicit that they don't like Anaklia, the Russians, that they don't like it for that reason. And Pompeo's statements and actions, and as an American I'm very appreciative of it, are exactly because he understands what U.S. strategic and foreign policy interests are.
Yes, and I also mentioned it that there cannot be any questions whether this was lobbied or not, like questions arise for Frontera, for example, because it wasn't lobbied.
Our lobbying has been based on facts and has been based on an analytical framework that these people, these counterparts in the West, understand. We have gotten now an American PR consultant, and that's public information. The company's called G7, but it's not a lobbying firm. He doesn't do lobbying. He helps us to develop
strategy.
He helps us
communication
develop our strategy and communications. He's basically a communications advisor, but we do not have a lobbying firm.
Yeah. So what should we be looking at now?
We have filed a request. We have filed a request for arbitration in the ICC, Court of International Arbitration. That's the ADC claim, and Bob Mayer has filed a personal claim as a Dutch citizen against the government of Georgia under the Dutch-Georgia Bilateral Investment Treaty in ICSID, which is in Washington, D.C. So there's two cases. I hope there's a settlement here. We don't want to get $1 billion from the Georgian government. That's really the last thing that we want. We have to do it to protect our legal rights. We have to make this claim. What we want, both for ourselves as well as for the country, is to build this project and to develop this project and do this project and have the government get its head right about doing this project.
I wrote today on the Facebook that despite the outcome, this will be the case that will probably get into textbooks.
Yes.
This will be a very, very, very interesting
It is a very interesting
case. This is not the last checkpoints of the season. We will be summing up the startup point of this project next week and provide some sneak preview of what we are up to for the next season.
So you have to watch us one more week for sure, but till then, let me once again give you the sense of what the Global Business Week looks like around the world.
So see you the next week.
See you.
Here is what you need to know to start your week. Investors will be looking ahead to the US jobs report for July, which is expected to shed more light on the strength of the economic rebound. Forecasts for the report fall into a broad range, but most analysts expect the bounce back in hiring to have slowed significantly last month. Markets will be also watching Congress, which remains deadlocked over the next round of economic relief after a critical lifeline for millions of unemployed Americans expired. It's halftime for the second quarter earnings season after stunning results for big techs last week, but faltering macroeconomic data and concerns over the course of the pandemic are weighing on Treasury yields. Meanwhile, the Bank of England is expected to stay the course at its meeting on Thursday, with investors awaiting any hints on the possible future direction of monetary policy.